Welcome back to Conversations with a Calvinist. My name is Keith Foskey, and I am a Calvinist. And I am excited today to introduce not only to my audience, but to the world, my new friend and friend of the show, the Redeemed Zoomer.
What's up, guys? I'm Redeemed Zoomer. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. I'm also a Calvinist, but I'm truly reformed and have superior theology.
All right. Yes, sir. And you are, in fact, you are a Presbyterian. So I'm wondering why you're not wearing a bow tie.
Yeah, good question. I am a Presbyterian. I'm part of the PCUSA. Don't click off yet. I'm not one of those. I'm trying to restore it, and that's something that I'll be talking about later in this video.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's a big part of why I'm having you on. But anytime I do anything related to denominations, whether it's denominations shooting guns or denominations ordering chicken wings or whatever, people just seem to respond because they think that the distinctions and the differences between the denominations are hilarious at times, but also interesting and intriguing. So, yeah, you definitely hit the nail on the head with that one. And
I always watch your videos because it's an ego boost to Presbyterians like me.
absolutely, absolutely. Everybody I meet thinks that I'm a Presbyterian, and I say, first of all, that would be way too on the
You're
nose.
smart.
Yeah, well, thank you, but no, it's because I tell them, I said it would be way too much of an ego boost if I actually was a Presbyterian. I make the hero someone that I'm not. I'm the Reformed Baptist. I'm never in the videos except for the shooting video. My friend played the Reformed Baptist just because I couldn't shoot two guns at one time and do it safely. So I had to have a second person in the video, and he helped me with that. But I want to ask you a question. Actually, I have several questions to ask you, but I want to start with this one. This one, because you and I have gotten to know each other and we've talked a little bit. Can you tell everyone just a little bit of your story of how you became a conservative Christian in a and when I say conservative, you became a gospel believing Christian in a liberal denomination, because you're in the PCUSA. You're in the one that many people would say is far afield. So how'd you get there?
Yeah, so I wasn't like raised in the PCUSA. I wasn't raised anything in particular. My family's religious history is complicated, but what I was really sort of catechized by, so to speak, was simply my community, which was in the suburbs of New York, a very like nominally Jewish area where leftism was just the default assumption and no one even questioned it. So I didn't even know that leftism was what I believed until I started to get into politics, and then I became like a really hardcore leftist, and that's what I was for a while. So I was never like an atheist. I always believed in God in some sense, but I thought religion was stupid and anti-scientific. That's what the public schools told me. All the history textbooks about Christianity were like Christians oppressed minorities, killed a bunch of people, and denied science. That was it, basically. And everything changed when I actually went to other parts of the country and met other Christians my age. I'd met Christians, but I hadn't really been in a community of Christians my age. And I learned that all the stereotypes I learned were completely wrong, and they were much more loving and accepting than anyone I had grown up with. So when I was completely different than them, they accepted me as their friend, and I made better friends there than I ever had before. And I went back home, and I was still very liberal, but I decided to become a Christian as well because I wanted to be like them. And being with them cleared up all the doubts and problems I had with Christianity. That's when I joined the PCUSA. But at the time, I didn't know that it was a liberal denomination. I just knew that the director of the camp where I went to was PCUSA, and the camp had a lot of connections with Presbyterian churches. So it just felt right for me. And I didn't know any theology, so I didn't know that Presbyterians were Calvinists. I didn't know what that means, but I had an intuitive sense that Presbyterians were the nerdy, intellectual Christians, and especially because I was coming from a very scientific, rational background, that's sort of what I felt like I belonged there. And at first, my PCUSA didn't have any obvious liberalism problems. It was one of the more moderate churches in the denomination. So the denomination as a whole is liberal, just like all the mainline churches. It's not just a Presbyterian problem. The mainline Baptist, Lutheran, Methodist, Anglican denominations are all liberal in their majority. But in all of them, it's a big tent, and there are conservative minorities. my church wasn't particularly liberal or conservative. It was just like moderate. And I didn't know enough doctrine to even smell anything that would have been wrong. So I don't even remember exactly what they taught, but I was just happy to be in church and I was happy to be a Christian. But once I got home and became a Christian, all my Jewish and atheist friends got really suspicious of me. I was like, don't worry, guys, I'm still a leftist. And I thought I could be like a Christian leftist. I thought I could reconcile the two. And what I learned is that they're two completely different religions. And you cannot reconcile the two. It's like being a Christian Muslim. And I wish leftists were more honest that it is a religion. And every religion has orthodoxy and heresy. So when I first started to question some leftist beliefs, it didn't matter that I was 95% leftist. I started to question like the trans issue. I was like, yeah, I don't really think there are 76 genders. My story in that is not unique. Every like leaving the left, I left the left story always starts with like questioning the trans issue. That's what happened to like J.K. Rowling and stuff. But I was completely canceled just for questioning the left on one issue because it's a religion. Like in Christianity, if a pastor believes everything in Christianity except, I don't know, the virgin birth, it might seem like a small issue compared to others, but you need to have doctrinal purity. So they would be considered a heretic for that. And because leftism is a religion, they just don't admit it. I was considered a heretic for not affirming the trans stuff. So I was excluded for that. And that sort of made me double down on my Christianity. But after a while, I was like, how do I know that Christianity is all true? I didn't have many resources. So that got me into studying theology. And I was always swarmed with atheist arguments from all sides. So that got me thinking about how to explain Christianity logically to other people. And that's how I sort of thought of a lot of the ideas that I share on my page now. So I think God used my time of doubts and struggles for that. And high school was absolute garbage for me because becoming more and more conservative as the years went on just put the nail in the coffin of my social life. So I had like no friends in high school, but things are much better now. Now I'm in college. It's great. And the page has been an incredible blessing. So along the way, I learned that my denomination did not believe the essentials of Christianity. And I consider just leaving and going something else like PCA many times. But I did learn the essentials of the Reformed faith from my mentor who still was faithful. And he told me why we cannot leave the main line. So
absolutely. Yeah. And we're going to talk about that in a bit because I do want to, I want to talk about Reconquista and all that, your reason for staying where you are and wanting to redeem where you are, which I think is interesting. And I want my audience to hear about that. It really is an amazing thought. To me, it almost seems impossible. I'm just telling you. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it. I've listened to your videos. I'm encouraged by it. I think it's a grand pursuit. And so please don't think when I say that I'm being negative. I'm just saying it just seems it's such a monumentous thing that you're doing. Yeah. So
I agree that it seems impossible.
Yeah, and like I said, pray that it's not, but yeah, definitely. So we'll get to that in a minute. But something you just said, I have to mention. You said that when you left the liberalism, when you left the leftist, you did so by committing heresy because you didn't believe something that they demanded that you believed. I don't think I've ever heard it explained quite that way. I think that's very helpful for people because when you say leftism is a religion and then you say it has orthodoxy and heresy, that puts a whole new picture on things like the trans issue or the LGBT movement. There are some things that you and I would probably not agree on as far as I would call probably secondary issues, things that we would come to different conclusions on. But we're in different places in our life. I think it's interesting that you are a young man, and I'm thankful to see a young man who cares enough to study these things and to be looking into these things. And I'm glad because it's good. And that's why you have the name, right? What does Zoomer mean, by the way? Tell
Generation Z.
Yeah,
Zoomer is slang for Gen Z. I didn't think of that name, even though there are a lot of accounts that are like Anglican Zoomer, Baptist Zoomer, all these things. Zoomer was already a common slang for someone who's in Gen Z. And there are a lot of well-meaning Gen Z like influencers. I don't know if you guys know Elijah Lamb. He's someone I know personally. I have a good relationship with him. He's a big Gen Z TikTok influencer. But their strategy is to try and be like Gen Z, to reach Gen Z. And there is scriptural support for that. They say like, oh, I became all things to all men that I might reach all men. However, that I probably didn't quote that right. I have a different approach. I think Gen Z is a wicked generation that people need to be redeemed from. So redeemed Zoomer is almost an oxymoron in that sense. But
Gotcha.
I think all things are redeemable. But just because Gen Z is redeemable doesn't mean it's good. I think relative to all the previous generations, it's the worst we've seen in a while. And the suicide rates and the atheism rates and just the utter disregard for family and even human life itself sort of proves that, I think.
Yeah, and it's amazing to even consider what you just said. Even things like suicide rates and things that people don't know all how bad things have gotten. So it's
it
good
is as bad as people say and worse. That's what I can say.
Yeah,
the condition of Gen Z.
Well, I want to point out one other video before we get to the Reconquista. I want to you have a video where you talk about 5 different levels of liberalism, and the reason why I wanted to bring this video out specifically is where I come from. And what I mean by that is I'm a Southern boy. I've been in Florida my whole life. I'm literally never lived more than 50 miles from where I was born. This is me. And growing up, especially in a small Southern town, you basically had the Baptists and the Catholics. You had this, you might have a few charismatics here, Pentecostals, whatever, but you had the conservatives, and then you had the liberals, you had the Baptists, you had the Catholics. Not to say that Catholics are necessarily liberal. I'm just saying everything was, there was pretty much straight lines drawn. You had liberals, conservatives, Baptists, Catholics, everything was one or the other. And, but you made a good point in the video. You said that there's not one type of progressive or liberal Christian. You said there's actually 5, and it gets progressively, ironically.
That's why it's called progressive. It's like a progressive illness that keeps getting worse.
Yeah, it gets worse. So I know I want people to go watch that video, but can you, just for the audience, just kind of very quickly give us what those 5 steps are and where someone might be?
Sure. So step 1 is what I call Christian guilt. It begins with thinking there's been something wrong with Christianity historically and that Christianity needs to progress. Step 2 is what I call disordered focus, where they still believe the essentials, but that's not what you'll hear preached on a Sunday morning. They focus on other things like social justice, but they still would believe the essentials. Stage 3 is scripture denial. That's where they begin to be gay affirming and universalist, but they would still believe the bare essentials to be saved. Like they'd still believe Jesus rose from the dead and that Jesus is God. And level 4 is where they stop being Christian altogether and commit explicit heresy by denying the divinity of Christ or that the resurrection actually happened. But they still believe in some sort of spirit. And level 5 is essential agnosticism, where they don't believe in a spirit. They don't believe in an objective supernatural or spiritual reality at all. They think it's all just a metaphor for social justice, and heaven is just a metaphor for the socialist utopia we're going to build here.
And you've experienced all the whole gambit, right? You've experienced everybody from one to the other. So tell us about Reconquista. Tell us what that is, because I'm anxious for people to hear what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Okay, so Reconquista is, I think, the only way that we can fight back against the tidal wave of leftism that is destroying our churches and our culture. So Western civilization, particularly America, was built by the church, specifically the churches that are now called the mainline churches, the historically and culturally rooted ones. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, all these really important cultural institutions were founded by the Protestant church, which is now just the mainline church. So for those of you who don't know, the difference between mainline and evangelical is mainline are the ones that have more continuity with the old Protestant churches, the ones that America was founded on. And evangelical churches, of course, sometimes the categorization's a bit arbitrary. Evangelical churches generally refer to churches that split off from the main line, as well as just non-denominational churches that do not have the same historical roots. So the evangelical equivalent of the PCUSA would be the PCA. There's many, but PCA is the largest. The PCA has some historic roots. They have some like historic buildings, but generally they don't have ties to the big universities. They most old historic churches at the center of any given town are going to be mainline, like PCUSA or United Methodist or Episcopalian. And these evangelical denominations, it all looks very new, and new isn't necessarily bad. But in this case, the old mainline churches are relics from a time when Christianity ruled society. And they're really relics of a more sophisticated and more spiritually better time. And that's why PCA churches objectively don't look as pretty as PCUSA churches on average. Of course, there's exceptions. And everyone's like, oh, that's very materialistic. It's as Baptists say with baptism, it's an outward sign of an inward change. It's an outward sign of an inward change that Christianity is no longer at the helm of the culture. And because the heart of the culture has always been religion. When the religion changes, the culture changes. And the religion that our society is based on is the historic Protestant churches. A lot of the leftism that was introduced into universities came from theological liberalism in the church. Theological liberalism denied the supernatural, and that really changed the worldview of a lot of the universities that were affiliated with the church. So the only way that we can fight back is to keep our cultural institutions and not let the things made for God's glory be used for blasphemy. Tragically, conservative Christians adopted the exact opposite strategy. Their strategy was run away from the institutions when they get hijacked and start new ones. The thing is, the new ones are never nearly as good. That's what J. Gresham Machen did with the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, and no one would have blamed him for doing it at the time, because he really tried to fix the PCUSA. Didn't work. He got kicked out. He started a brand new denomination. But the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, as devout as they are, as orthodox as they are, they're kind of like the Amish of Presbyterians. They're completely isolated. They don't have any historic institutions to their name. And the PCUSA still has a lot of cultural connections. There are families who've donated to seminaries for generations, since like Mayflower families, I'm talking, especially for the Congregationalists, and those seminaries have now gone woke. So what, are we supposed to just build a brand new seminary that's like, rents out a public school? Because that's what a lot of the churches do. We need to retake the institutions. And the problem with a lot of evangelicals is they have such an individualistic mindset. They think all that matters is my individual soul going to heaven, and before I go to heaven, I'll try and take as many other individual souls with me to heaven. But it's really about the kingdom of heaven coming here on earth. Like N.T. Wright talks about that a lot. I know N.T. Wright is shaky in some other areas, but he's absolutely right that Christianity is a kingdom. And the kingdom strategy that the evangelicals have adopted is just keep retreating from the mighty fortresses and build tiny little shacks and try to stand up to them. And now the institutions, the powerful institutions that Christians built for God's glory, are now in the hands of leftists. And evangelicals run away in all aspects. They're like, retreat to the rural areas, retreat from the universities, retreat from the schools, retreat from everything, as if they don't think the Lord of the universe is on their side. Now, what do we do about that? I pointed out a problem that, yes, Christians have been kicked out of the cultural institutions. Everyone knows that. I'm a genius. But what do we actually do about that? Like you said, Reconquista seems like an impossible task. How do you change a big denomination? How do you change a denomination that's had these beliefs for like 100 years and get them to just change their religion practically? I know. Ask the leftists. They did that. They did it. If they could hijack, why can't we hijack? Are you saying that we're weaker than them? Are you saying that the Lord of the universe is not on our side? The way they hijacked was they were very patient. They did not run away. You'll notice leftists never start their own institutions. They just hijack the institutions Christians make. There's some like attempts at starting new leftist universities, and they're a total joke. Just like a lot of the evangelical universities that Christians start. But the leftists don't need to do that because it's like a virus. I've compared it to a religion. I'll also compare it to a virus. Viruses are not technically classified as living. I'm not trying to like dehumanize leftists here. They're living. It's an analogy. Viruses are not technically living. they don't reproduce on their own. What they do is they hijack healthy cells, use the cells to reproduce, the cells get destroyed and move on. That's what the left does to our churches, to our universities, and to all of our cultural institutions, even like Boy Scouts and entertainment, of course. They hijack it, they use it to turn it into a leftist factory. Eventually it gets destroyed because of that. They just move on to the next thing. So Albert Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The evangelical strategy of running away and just trying to convert as many individual souls as possible has been tried for 100 years. And as evangelicalism has risen, by evangelicalism in this context, I'm referring to the sort of offshoot splitting off from the main line and trying to start something brand new. As that has risen, as these disconnected offshoot churches have risen, Christianity in the West, Christian society has fallen. Now, I know correlation doesn't equal causation, but the very thing it was intended to do, it failed to do. So Reconquista is going to be hard. We're all going to need it to be on board. It can't just be me and a few of my Zoomer friends, but I think it's something that really needs to happen. Now, I'm not telling everyone to get up and leave their churches. What I would like to happen is for the main lines to unite with their conservative counterparts. So we could have PCA pastors in the PCUSA institutions, for example, and the same with the Baptist or Methodist equivalent. There's a lot of Christians who are just floating around and don't really have a church. There are a lot of them that go to mega churches that they don't necessarily agree with doctrinally just because their friends are there. Those are the people that we need to rally up. They need to flood the main line. And you might be wondering, okay, you go into the main line. How do you actually take over? Let me let you on a little secret the main line doesn't want you to know. They are desperate. They make themselves look strong. They are not. They hand out leadership positions like free candy because all of them, with a few exceptions, are on the brink of closure. There's a principle that liberals do not care about going to church. That's why it's like they hijack it for a time and then it gets destroyed. The only denominations that are actually thriving in the main line are the only congregations in the main line that are thriving are the conservative ones. So liberal churches and liberals in church don't last very long. What we do is we take the main line is like a shrinking sphere. We inject a bunch of conservatives into it. The conservatives wait it out, weather the storm. Eventually the liberal population dies off and the conservatives take over. And they, like I said, they hand out leadership positions like free candy. My dad became an elder at our Presbyterian church within 2 years of joining. I became a Sunday school teacher within 1 year of joining because of how desperate they are. There are these, like Christians in the early church took over the entire Roman Empire. And Christians today are like, I'm too scared to join the main line. I'm too scared of these like 3 old lesbians that run the church. Come on, guys. God is on our side. We can do it.
That would be a great 10-second opening clip. I may have to try to remember that. We're scared of the 3 lesbians that run the church. That's funny. All right. So what does you kind of gave the game plan? Okay. You want to see people join the mainline denominations and take leadership positions, try to reclaim these things for Christ in the name of Christ, because you believe that the true church is strong enough to do that. The true believers have the ability, have the spiritual, pedigree. I mean, the spiritual, backing, because it's Christ who is with us and it's Christ who is in us. So with what you're doing, you just said you're in your church, and you're still a Sunday school teacher?
Well, no, because I went off to college.
Oh, okay.
But my dad is still an elder, and my dad is working to try and make sure the church does not become a gay affirming church, because there are some liberals in the church who are trying to push that.
Okay, so not all PCUSA churches are gay affirming?
No, they have the ability to choose. As of now, my church has not made an official stance, and my church is voting in May whether or not it's going to celebrate Pride Month in June. And it was just requested by one of the members of the congregation, and the session is going to debate it. My dad is the most adamant voice against it. So prayers for my dad would be appreciated, and his work. There are some PCUSA churches that have explicitly said no to gay marriage. There's actually an entire presbytery in San Diego, I think, that has said no to it. And there's a whole organization within it called the Fellowship Community, ready to harvest does denominations videos like me, but unlike me, he's actually a lot more academic about it. And he has a great video called Evangelical Holdouts within the PCUSA. So we do exist.
Absolutely. I do also want to tell you that in the future, if there ever does end up a PCUSA joke within one of my denominational videos, because I kind of have one in the making right now, I just want you to know I'm not talking about you.
I know, yeah.
There is well, actually, I put one in my. Did you see the Top Gun video?
Not yet. I saw the recommendation for it, but
there's a short little reference to PCUSA, and again, I am thankful that there are people out there like you who want to see redemption and restoration brought to these denominations, and that's again, it's to me it's an amazing concept. It's one I hadn't even really considered before listening to your videos, that, you know, they took it away. Why can't we take it back? And as simple as that is, that's really your message is.
And I want to clarify something. I'm not trying to turn the PCUSA into something it's not. I'm trying to make it more authentically what it is. Because on the PCUSA, by the way, this doesn't mean I'm offended by your jokes. Keep making those jokes and make more of them. The PCUSA is not a liberal denomination. The official beliefs of the PCUSA are not what the General Assembly says. They're not what the lesbian pastor who went viral on New York Times or whatever says. It's what's stated in the confessions. And the PCUSA, at its core, at its essence, is a very good denomination. I actually like it better than the other Presbyterian denominations because I think the PCUSA is actually more richly rooted in the Reformed tradition because we have a bunch of confessions, not just Westminster. We have Westminster and a bunch of others, including some ones that actually address issues of modernity. Like if you were to ask which denomination, PCUSA or PCA, has a confession of faith that explicitly condemns sexual anarchy in the modern world, you'd expect it's PCA, but no, it's PCUSA, because PCUSA, it's not just one document that's frozen in time that they follow. I feel like PCUSA gives you a more holistic Christian tradition rather than just beliefs in a box. And that's, as a PCUSA member, that's sort of how I see the PCA. Even though I really like the PCA, I feel like something is still lacking, if that makes sense.
When you say that document about what was it? A document about sexual misconduct?
It's not all about that. It's the Confession of 1967 from the PCUSA, and it addresses the issues of modernity. And now some people would say it's like, some people don't like it. I actually really do like it. I think it's a very necessary document. The PCUSA has also a confession that was written in 1935 Germany, when the Nazis were rising to power, that were not going to submit to dictators. That's called the Barmen Declaration, written by Karl Barth and Dietrich Bonhoeffer. So there's a lot of really cool stuff about the PCUSA that never gets talked about. So some people ask me, like, they try to take the Reconquista idea and apply it to, like, oh, I go to like a prosperity gospel church. Should I try to Reconquista this church? No, because you're not trying to restore it. You're trying to make it something it never was and was never meant to be. If you're in a prosperity gospel church, just leave and join a historic biblical church.
Okay, well well, there you go. There's your there's the people that can fill the pews of the PCUSA is just leave your prosperity gospel church.
Yes,
that's a good message, because I would wholeheartedly agree. Definitely to get out of those churches that are not preaching the gospel. Again, great line. Well, thank you, buddy, for coming on the program today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I'll be looking forward to pointing people to your videos.
All right. God bless.